please. So welcome to the airiest, hippest, coolest part of the whole Bruegel annual meeting. We have the nicest room for you. It's a lot less hot than where I spent most of the day down there, and it's the whole thing feels a lot younger, obviously. So we are here to celebrate the winner of the 2022 essay competition to celebrate the year of the youth, actually, the 2022 year of the youth. So I understand that Bruegel has never done this, right, André? This is the first time we have done this. And so the rules were the following. So participants, first of all, you had to be young. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the cutoff was, but Joana is definitely young. She's 18, I think, right? So she definitely made that cut. And so participants were asked to answer the question, what should be a priority of the European Union's economic policy agenda in the coming years in less than 8,000 words? And Joana wrote 7,996 words, I believe. I saw it. So that was very good. That's sort of a basic academic. That basically qualifies you to be a think tank person. So there's a little bit of prize money, which unfortunately I cannot hand over today. I had hoped to, but Alma said no. Apparently these things are transferred into bank accounts these days. And then, very importantly, the part of the prize is the opportunity to discuss the findings with a staff member of the European Commission. So I'm very, very happy that Marion Finke is with us from the cabinet of the European Commissioner for Democracy and Demography. And the reason, of course, why she is from that cabinet is because demography is what the essay is about. And so you have the essay, you would have had the chance to read it, but instead you chose to chat on the terrace in the beach. But in any case, we will ask Joana. Oh, sorry. Joana is an undergraduate at the Great University of Warwick doing politics, philosophy, and law, right? PPL. And this is are you going into your second year or into your third year?
I just finished my first year.
You just finished your first year. Fantastic.
So going to second, yeah.
Congratulations. So
Thank you.
Joana is going to just summarize her arguments in the essay for about 5 minutes, 6 minutes. Marion is going to comment, and then we will take questions. So please go ahead.
Honored chair and fellow guests, it is a privilege to be sharing the stage today with such elected members of European politics, Mr. Zettelmeier, Ms. Fink, and it is my distinguished honor to be addressing you all today. Exactly 4 months ago, I was riding a bus back to my university to finish my first year undergraduate, and I had a Word document with the single headline open, what should be the economic policy agenda of the EU in the coming years. And it was not an easy question to answer, and I came across various topics, but no other seemed as important to me or as concerning to the EU as the inversion of its demographic and all of its scales. It is a problem that is affecting all member states, and I became very interested in trying to solve it and find more about it. A strong demographic is one that has a stable aging dependency ratio, a strong working sector, and a growing young population. But according to predictions published by Eurostat, it seemed that the European overall population pyramid was heading towards a different direction. First, an aging population. The old age dependence ratio is set to double in 2100, nearly the value that it was in 2019. And this means that for every person that is 65 years old or older, there will be less than 2 people of working age. And so this growing population will put a strain on the labor sector who work to support dependents. And to add to that problem, trends of depopulation in the working sector and the young sector were also noticeable. In the youngest population sectors were expected to shrink slightly due to fewer births, and this was known as aging at the bottom. And so the proportion of children was expected to shrink in both relative and absolute terms in the EU. And moreover, you have to consider the fact that there may be factors impeding the transition from young minor into the labor sector. And in other words, this was brain drain, which is the individual immigration of the skilled and the educated to better working opportunities. And brain circulation in the EU, if not controlled, can create an imbalanced equilibrium between the states and gaps in many of our sectors. However, as with all problems, there are clear and innovative solutions that can always better it. And in my essay, I proposed and divided my policies into 2 sections. The first section was to grow the next generation sustainably and to address the problems, and the second section to address the problems of the labor sector. And in the former, my first policy was tax benefits for family, and this would constitute a targeted tax exemption for personal income tax of guardians and minors. The tax breaks would lower the cost of having children for parents in a more sustainable way. And in my proposal, I outlined 3 models of tax exemption, in which there would be a cap-off at 3 dependents, as the purpose of this and all of my policies was to grow the next generation sustainably, a way to create long-term growth without creating or without attempting to create undesired consequences. Secondly, I proposed subsidies for public transportation. This was a small initiative, but that could go a long way. It would allow families to benefit from a lower fare of public transport, and the small subsidy could reduce familial spending and in turn increase yearly disposable income. And I find it very important to note that as well that my policies are meant to raise fertility rates in a sustainable way, as opposed to a baby boom. For that reason, both policies aim at providing parents the opportunity to save on their yearly disposable income, long-term savings, so that the population grows in the long term as well. My second subsection of policies addressed the issues concerning the labor sector. I presented a policy that I named the Young Dreamer Work Placement Scheme, and it aims at promoting a controlled and sustained flow of European migration by young workers and students throughout the European Union. And it would create an efficient network, I would hope, that would aim at matching students to employability shortage in their sector. This is very important because according, for example, to a paper published by the McKinsey Global Institute, in the largest metropolitan areas and fast-growing regions of Europe, less than 60% of expected job growth can be filled by the existing residents. And so this policy aims to improve the rates of graduate employment and fill the gaps and deficits of the labor sector. Finally, I presented 2 policies to increase my immigration. The first proposes the formation of a range of short-term visas, and these would mostly be seasonal and would try to target, at least at first, low-skilled employees and try and match them to their to labor shortage. For example, manufacturing is a sector that is struggling. And this policy, what I coined the EU Seasonal Worker Visa Scheme, but that was based on research I found from Clemens et al., published in 2018. And this paper analyzed a similar policy that generated a lot of positive outcomes. And I propose that this policy would go hand in hand with another policy that would create an immigration statistical platform whereby a digital database would screen immigrant applicants, would match them to reported labor gaps, and could potentially even identify long-term immigrant stays. As a last remark, I just want to say that it has been my honor to participate in this youth competition, and I want to thank Bruegel for such a warm welcome and the opportunity to be here today at such a young age. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Joana.
Thank you.
Marian, please.
Yes, many thanks for you, for your presentation, for your wonderful essay, and also for Bruegel to have me here. I'm talking today on behalf of the Vice President of the Commission, Dubravka Svica. She is a former mayor of Dubrovnik, the Croatian city of Dubrovnik, and she used to be a member of the European Parliament also. In the Commission, she is responsible for democracy and demography. And she would be delighted to be here today because she likes to interact with youth. In this democracy file, she was heading the conference on the future of Europe from the Commission side, and there she made sure that youth is overly represented in the citizens' panels, where we harness the views of the citizens to feature in our policies prominently. And I'm now explaining to her your wonderful essay, and she would be delighted to see this now and to see this responding to this question: what should be the priority for the European Union's economic policy agenda in the coming years? Because talking about economic policy, this is something sexy. This is something which attracts media attention. This is something which attracts policymakers, and featuring demography there as one of a priority, this is very excellent, as your whole essay is. Because Vice President Svica wants to make this issue of demography more prominently in the Commission, more institutionalized, more important. Because if you want to look for somebody in the Commission asking who is responsible for demography apart from the Vice President herself and her cabinet, you wouldn't find a unit demography. You wouldn't find a directorate, a directorate general, an agency, something which is called demography. So it's very good that you positioned this topic so prominently on the economic policy agenda of the European Union for the future. And it's not only topic-wise very interesting, it's also very timely that this award is presented today, because tomorrow the Commission will present the care strategy, the European care strategy. That's a flagship initiative of the demography file. This is a response to demographic transition. This is having this intergenerational approach from youth to old age. This is about the people who need to care, who receive the care, and the carers themselves, be it a child, a young person, or an old person. It will be about long-term care and also about early childhood care, which allows women to, mainly women, to participate more and better in the labor market. And the strategy will be centered around 4 principles: affordability of care, availability of care, accessibility of care, and appropriate quality of care. You will see this tomorrow about the details of this strategy. I cannot give more details right now, but tomorrow after the college meeting, the Commission will talk about this. And it will also have a migration angle. This is something which you have in your 3rd part of the essay, the migration angle to demography, and also the impact care or caring about care has on the participation of women in the labor market. And this is something I really admired in your essay, that you said several times it's very important that women participate in the labor market, even if you're talking about demography, about policies to increase the fertility rate. It's important that we keep the participation of women in the labor market high and increase it. So this will be the strategy tomorrow, and then further down the year, we will have another important strategy on demography, the brain drain strategy. This is your other measure that you're proposing, addressing brain drain. We might call it harnessing talent in all EU regions, but you propose a measure called Young Dreamers Work Placement Scheme. So I can only invite you, after having read your excellent essay, encourage you to make your dreams become true about this. And maybe continuing this in this ping pong with think tanks, but also with the European Commission. You gave us this essay, and I've seen that you were inspired by the 2021 Aging Report of the Commission. But at the same time, we also published another report, and this is what I want to give to you. It's the Commission's first demography report, and we want to make it a product which persists. So we will publish another one at the end of this year, and then again. So really to become demography, and I invite you as the audience, I invite the think tank, I invite you to make demography one of the priorities of the Commission's or the European Union's economic policy agenda in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Super. Great. Well, I hope the Commissioner has signed this. If not, you actually probably have a reason to go and see her, so that... So, fantastic. Do we have questions from the audience? Please, Georgi, and then, yes. Go.
This is very good. Essay. Allow me to make 3 points. One is aging population. If you spend more on health, prevention, for instance, people will live healthier longer, and then they could work more, not at 65, but maybe at 72 or 75, they can go to retire. But what you have to do that, to have a different approach to medical things. Because most people, I'm not talking about the intellectuals, but most people in the villages and the countryside, etc., small cities, they go to the doctor when there is a problem, and then there is already a big problem. So that's one way of doing it. Second way is that I fully agree that women should work as much as, just like everybody else, and but that means that they would get married later, have fewer children. That's what the demographic trends show. Where can you help there? You can help with nurseries, so that they can work. Home office helps, because you can do home office. You can be a lawyer, you can be an economist, etc. That would help. And third, what you mentioned, tax incentives and transportation incentives. And I noticed, I am from Hungary, so I noticed that Hungary is the second after France on the tax incentive. We have introduced extraordinary tax incentives, and a little bit the birth rate is increasing, but it's way not at 2.1. It's, I think it went from 2.3 to 2.5 or something like that. But then a third consideration is that if you look at total factor productive, TFA, total factors, then you have demography, people, you have capital, and you have innovation and technology. If you spend on innovation and technology, productivity will increase. Even with a shrinking population, you can have an increasing GDP, and with an increasing GDP, you can even spend more on health, for the elderly. The most important thing to get the technology up, education. So So it's a very important thing of education. You have to start at very early age to get everybody up to a certain level so that they can be the most, the most productive in a given situation. Not everybody would be. So normally what I am saying when I am when I'm talking about that to audiences, I think, you know, you have a ladder. Some people would aim at the top of the ladder and they will reach it. Some of them aim at the top and they don't reach it exactly. And then some of them reach it half, some of them at 1/3. But you have to give the chance to everybody to start on that ladder. That's the most important. I stop here, but I just read that you made a, I don't know, an activity, Climb Together.
Yes.
Correct? Well, I would like to discuss with you later on what it is, because this is the Climb Together. This is exactly what I was talking about, this ladder. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Ruth Passerman from the European Commission. Thank you very much for this note, because I think I really actually agree with you that demography is very important, and because it's about very long-term trends, it sort of tends to fall off the policy agenda, but actually it's destiny, like they say, demography is destiny. But having said that, I have a few comments on your paper, if you don't mind. The first one is linked to what previous speaker said. It doesn't really cover the issue of aging population and how much we could get more with more preventive health, healthier people in older age. And in reality, I mean, in the short term, this is what has to happen, is that people have to work for longer. And it is actually already happening a lot. But this is, so this is very important aspect of, you know, declining labor market, declining population in the labor market. So this is the first point. The second point, I must apologize, I haven't read it now while you were talking, so I didn't really quite understand on your dreamer scheme, but the key, I mean, if it's about allowing young people to find work throughout all over Europe, that's fine, but that is in contradiction with trying to maintain employment into regions with declining populations. Because the regions with declining populations, it's because there are no opportunities there, or less opportunities. And that's why the people leave and go to the capital city or whatever. And so this is an issue which is serious in many regions and countries of the EU, and we want to address it. I don't think this program would address it, to be honest. I think it would address younger people starting working earlier, perhaps, but not the issue of the declining population in some regions. And I think this is a tension between the two things. And we just have to recognize that there is a tension between opportunities for young people and allowing young people to go where the opportunities are, and maintaining a certain level of employment into declining regions. Sorry to say it like that, but I think this, so this is an issue. Finally, I also think there is, sorry, not finally, another comment on there is a time lag between what is happening in the labor market now, where there may be labor shortages now, and the demography, the sort of incentives to natality, let's say, to fertility in general. I mean, yes, but that's going to take 20 years before you have a labor force, yeah? So the two, which means that the labor market has time to oscillate 5 times before you get there. So the two things are really on two completely different timelines. And finally, I have to say, I am personally slightly at unease of anything which is about increasing birth rate in an Earth which has 8 billion people, and where we're trying to address climate change. And I mean, in perspective, it has to be about stabilization of the humans on the planet. So there is a problem of aging in many countries in the world, not only in Europe. We have to manage it, but I don't think we have to manage it by increasing natality. I think it's really a question of managing the transition, a bit like we're doing with climate change, but actually the aim should be to reduce the number of humans on the planet or maintain a stable number, if you see what I mean.
Do I answer now?
Is there any third question, possibly Nicholas? And then that's as much as we're going to take, okay? And you don't need to answer everything, Joanna.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yep.
Just first of all, congratulations to this.
So this is Nicholas
excellent-
Fortier from the
Yeah,
from
so
the,
I'm-
Bruegel. Yeah.
So I'm from Bruegel. I used to work on fertility issues and demographic issues during my doctorate. So it's a super important topic I really care about, and I learned some from your essay. So congratulations to this. So my question is, you talk in your essay about tax breaks or subsidies for public transports for poor or children-rich families. And I wonder, we've seen during Corona a lot of subsidies programs on public transports, like the €9 ticket. Now, everything under 300 kilometers in Spain in terms of public transport going to be free for some time. So I was wondering, how do you think about these things? How do you think about their effect on fertility? Is this something like in the direction of what you're proposing? Or do you think it should be more targeted to the specific families?
Well, thank you so much for all the questions. I'm going to try to put my memory to the test and address them all. You mentioned healthcare. I also thought about healthcare, and I think we should use more of the what we call the aging population and 65 and older. And I think there's a lot of room for solutions there. There is, we could, this is ideas off the top of my head, but we could reform pension systems so that it translates to higher life expectancy, but at the same time, we want to take care of that life expectancy. So we could invest in mobile doctors or telemedicine, which could help to not overcharge hospitals, sorry. And also the creation of more flexible work hours. We saw in COVID a lot of that, and that could be used for maybe people who it would be too much of a burden to work full-time, but maybe part-time for our more elder senior citizens, and push them back into the workforce. Not push them, but invite them back into the workforce, because I think there's a lot of room for solutions there. I want to thank you so much for your question. And if you want to chat later about Climb Together, I'd love to. Very shortly, it's a small NGO project that I coordinated back in high school, which was a year ago, but but it was to help finance the university scholarship of women who were in financial trouble. And it was a project it was very dear to my heart, that concerned issues that I very much cared about. And to segue into that, I do share your concern for raising fertility rates, especially because those tend to push women back into lack of opportunity to go to the work sector, which, as I tried to mention as much as I could, is a problem and I would never want it to happen. And I share your concern for the overpopulation issue in the world, which I'm very much up to date with. And I in my original essay, as Mr. Zettelmeyer mentioned, had 4 words, 8,000 words minus 4 words. And I did mention the overpopulation issue, and that if it was going to be a problem, that I would not want it I did not want at all to add to that problem. And so perhaps we could have more boosting adoption in each nation, as a way to make use of the young population without essentially raising it a lot, because it is an issue, overpopulation, and we do not want it at all to increase it. I think you had one more question. The worker scheme, sorry, yes. The Dreamer, it was such a long name, I don't know why I didn't shorten it. The worker dreamer, I can't even spell it. It's in the paper. I'm so sorry, I don't recall exactly what your concern was about the dreaming. Right, and that is absolutely a valid point, because labor mobility is moved and accompanies job concentration, and right now job concentration is in a lot of big cities, as to say, and smaller regional areas are losing a lot of people, and that is a problem. And I think, at the same time, I think that this, of course, is a very preliminary policy, and it's a theory and idea, at least. So it could be adjusted to make use of regional areas that could potentially have strong or good companies, even small companies. A lot of young people nowadays even prefer to work at smaller companies rather than big Fortune 500. So I think there's certainly room for adjustment in that scheme, and I'd love to take you up on that invite to work on it. This was such an interesting topic to research and find more about. And if I had more than 8,000 words, I would absolutely do another policy to address how we could make use of the aging population. Unfortunately, I didn't, but it's on my mind. And finally, your third question. I'm so sorry. I speak fast, you speak fast, but I didn't get you. It was the transportation and...
So the question was, how do you think about all the kind of transportation subsidies we see now in countries like Germany and Spain? You propose a subsidy for child-rich families, and now we see this for the entire population, making public transport more cheap. Do you think this is a good policy, or should it be more targeted than this?
So it is definitely a small initiative, especially if you adjust the policy to concerning only some families, maybe families who would make more of their saving in their yearly disposable income. I definitely think that subsidies do make up a lot. I can't recall the statistics, and it's for sure in my essay, but families use a lot of transportation because the kids, they can't drive, and especially lower income families use them. And so if we could, for certain, I didn't mention that, but for certain, these two policies of raising fertility rates would be better, or would need some adjustment in the sense of who is it available to, or how much is available to which family, so that it makes it fair and it makes it about equity, which is different than equality. It's so that everyone starts on the same stage instead of giving people the same things, if that makes sense. And I think that's all the questions.
I think you have given a very good answer, right? Excellent. So, Joana, congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you very much.
Thank you.